Authority.
Councilor Russell? I'll let you speak too.
Yes, thank you. I just feel that there are some fundamental issues here that we need to ensure protections for our residents. And yes, there are some efforts to address these, no question, which I'm grateful for. But the problem is that it's only in part. And yes, a stewardship plan is established that may, in part, for a temporary period of time, help people with any kind of impairment of income or any loss of value in things, their property. But I think that we have to be vigilant to ensure that people's property isn't, there isn't any trespass on private property without notification, without approval, and those fundamental protections are not overlooked, as well as people not being in a financially burdened state ultimately. So if we have quantified this, sent it to the Asaba Bay Conservation Authority, then we can have insurance, we've done due diligence for our residents.
Councilor Lowe?
Just a couple of points regarding the letter. Kathy Brown did make a presentation, made it very clear that in Lambton Shores there are no significant threats. Having said that, there are moderate threats, and the best way to deal with moderate threats is good stewardship practices and education and partnerships. So I'm sure that part of that will be developing through ABC and Sinclair. I will say that the Clean Drinking Water Act, Part 4, regulates drinking water threats and includes very clear, specific provisions for enforcement, entry, and tribunals, and all of that. Yes, and Elizabeth, you did mention the Ontario Stewardship Program, where there are dollars that are provided, but there has to be some landowner responsibility as well, in part with all of this. I guess if this council chooses to support sending a letter, I will say one thing. Letters from the municipality of Lambton Shores come from the council, come from the clerk, and not from an individual councillor. So that would, if we choose to send one, then it should be coming appropriately.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my expectation was. Someone had asked that I actually put together kind of a draft letter at the last meeting when I expressed some concerns. And so this is simply a draft letter that the staff can personalize and put onto our letterheads.
Councilor Underwood?
Yeah, two things. I thought we discussed that you guys, or we were going to take that up to the county level. Like, sorry, we're going to bring it to them. Okay. Well, the second thing then is the Act will be covering all this, because some landowners may be unreasonable. God forbid that's ever happened in Ontario, but some people may not want anybody on the land under any reason. And the Source Water Protection Plan, I'm pretty sure at the provincial level, is going to have some criteria for when they need to go in. They're going to have laws to be able to go in, and that's not our jurisdiction. That's the provincial level. So,
Councilor Cook?
Exactly. Just going to echo what Councilor Underwood was saying. I guess I would like to see some correspondence from other rural people if they're concerned about this, rather than not saying it's just coming from a couple individuals, but I want to see some correspondence come to council in support of this letter.
Yeah, I'll further that thought. I think the thought that being mayor, when Kathy was here, you did make your points well known. I'm not sure if it's that far, but I think we do have our representatives with the different rural organizations out in our municipality, and if we were to send this draft letter to them and see if that's an issue with them, and if we get a response that is appropriate to what your letter's saying, then I think I would support the idea of sending it to other municipalities to make sure that we have a coalition of municipalities that goes with Asaba Bayfield and says, we do not want this if this is the case. I haven't heard anything until you brought it up before. And I talk to Larry Brown all the time, and Larry's the, I'm not even sure what his position is.
Chairman of the Source Water Protection.
Anyways, I see Larry all the time, and he seems it's a really good program, and I hadn't really heard that concern. It can be a concern. I just like to see that if it is a concern, right, that we're hearing it from our rural neighbors. I haven't heard it before you brought it up. When Kathy was here.
I know with council, and then you brought up that you wanted this letter sent, council, that council wasn't in the position that they thought it was necessary to send a letter at that time. You asked to draft your own letter, so we have it here for consideration. Councilor Scott first.
I'd just like to say, the Asaba Bayfield, just from having sat on their board, I thank Kathy for coming. She was at the meeting on Thursday. The bottom line is that they never go onto anybody's property without permission, so that's part of their policies and procedures. They can't go onto properties. And the source protection plan that Kathy brought here, as well as is given to the group, they're in the process now of looking at how they're going to keep going on with what they've got, and they haven't formulated that all yet. So it's, I don't know.
Just to respond to Mark's concerns about other municipalities and things, if you go on the net, there's an extensive amount of information there about the concerns that these can become a problem for the rural people. It's a very real concern, and I think it was the Ontario landowners that initially awakened people to the possibilities, and then beyond that, other people have risen up. We don't know exactly how it's going to be applied, and it might not be a problem, but I think the fundamental issue is that, yes, the Asaba Bayfield and others have assured of notification, but not necessarily approval of going onto land. They'll let them know that they're going to do it. And so then we start to question, do we have a fundamental property right that we can protect our land? Or do we have an appeal process? And that's the last point. Do we have an appeal process if it is too onerous? We might be considered, radical if we don't want people on our land, but we have to be treated respectfully, that if we have a legitimate concern that's evidentiary based, we should be able to express our concerns and maintain our protections. So I just think I have no problem approaching the rural organizations and asking them what their stand is on it in the local area. Absolutely, that's fine. But it's something we need to consider in protections for our municipality.
Councilor Russ.
Well, and I think your heart's in the right spot, let's put it that way. My understanding at the county level, you people have an agricultural review committee or agriculture advisory committee, am I correct?
Yes, we do.
Well, that would be the type of body, send it to them, because we also have St. Clair doing source water protection. This is not an issue that's specific to Asaba Bayfield, and I think what, just a little one here, the deputy mayor, land rights, our constitution in Canada, even though some people think so, does not guarantee land rights. It is a sad reality, and there's no use discussing it, but the fact is when our constitution came back over in 83, 84, it does not, or 82, it does not ensure land rights. So it's a fact.
This is, well,
Thanks to Trudeau.
is being put in place to protect,
I wasn't blaming anybody, I was just.
I will.
to protect the water. The bottom line, is this is being put in place to protect water. There's a problem that they have to go on. I hope that they protect their water.
Okay, so since we're continuing in your state, I suggest that this be sent to the Agriculture Advisory Committee in the county. That's fine. Get their feedback on that. I actually would suggest Ontario Federation of Agriculture and National Farmers Union as well. And I think those three as recipients, but I would suggest that we get it back, put a time limit of a month, so that we can then send it on to the Asaba Bayfield, so that it's received during the public process, which is, I'm not sure when it's over, I think there's a couple of months public process. So the seconder, maybe the seconder could change that. Did you
Did you
second that?
second that?
Yeah, I seconded it.
Yep.
So I can second it with an amendment. That the letter be drafted to those people outlining the main salient points of this letter, not this letter. Understand, like your points, that would make more sense, to send a letter. That'd be something you would send after we did our input. But your main points here, on behalf of the residents' request, those are salient